Thank you for plugging into this Family Life News podcast, streaming issues-driven, family-focused news.
Listening for the heartbeat of the gospel. This is Missions Pulse from Family Life News, connecting you with ministries and outreaches that are active in sharing the good news of Jesus Christ. We're talking with Rob Myers of Door International, which has a very unique angle on doing Christian ministry. Door is involved in deaf ministry and helping people share the gospel and be church to folks who do not have the ability to hear. Tell us a little bit about what Door's focus and mission is.
Sure. Thanks, Greg. So Door primarily focuses on deaf people as an unreached people group. What many people don't realize is that there are 70 million deaf people worldwide, and very, very few of them, even here in the U.S., have access to the gospel and know Christ. Some of the estimates are that less than 2% of deaf people are believers, and that often surprises people. The reason that deaf people are cut off from the gospel turns out to be connected to some assumptions that we often have about deaf people. If we were to imagine that we became deaf right now and that we didn't have access to sound information, then we would shift to written information. We would get all of our information from reading. But what we don't realize is that reading's actually a sound-based activity. When we learned to read, we actually had previously, growing up, become fluent in English or fluent in the spoken language that was around us. We heard it, we responded to it. And then when we go to read, we're sounding out letters that are connected to words that are a part of a language that we already know. But that's not true for deaf people. Deaf people grow up, and in many cases, I think the estimates are around 80% of households in the U.S. Deaf children with hearing parents, most of those hearing parents never learn to communicate with their deaf children. They never learn sign language, and the deaf children don't have the ability to hear spoken language and then repeat it. That means our assumption that, well, deaf people can have full access to written language, so in order to get them the gospel, we just need to get them written information. That turns out not to be true. And so you actually have to shift your focus entirely. Instead of thinking of deafness as a disability, though that's what it is, it's the only disability that when children are born that way, they're cut off from the language of their family and they suddenly become part of a new language group that's using sign language.
It's a different vantage point to say that this is like reaching out across cultures to do that, but that really is what's happening. I can imagine many of our listeners being shocked, being surprised, being horrified that among deaf people, only 2% faithful disciples of Jesus Christ.
That's right. And right now, to add a little bit more picture, if you think about deaf people mostly only having access to sign language resources, then you may ask, for example, well, do deaf people have access to the Bible in sign language? And there are about 375 sign languages around the world, and only 25% of those sign languages right now have any scripture work that has been done. So in other words, 75% of sign languages still don't have a single verse translated. So it's only been within the past 30 or 40 years that deaf ministry has really begun to develop, that we've seen deaf leaders trained and really begin to be out there in the field, sharing the gospel, helping communities do Bible translation in various sign languages, and really seeing the gospel spread in amazing ways now within those communities.
Rob, our listeners could certainly support the ministry of Door with our prayers. How else can we connect or be supportive of what you are accomplishing?
We would just encourage people to spread the word about the need for deaf ministry. Let people know that this is it's a new area, but it's been an area that's been a need for so long, and we could only do what we do now with modern technology. So this appears to be God's timing for this people group at this time to begin to really see the gospel penetrate and spread within their communities.
Our guest is Rob Myers. His ministry is called Door International, and the website is doorinternational.org. Rob, thank you so much for sharing your heart, for sharing the gospel with our Family Life listeners today.
Thanks so much for having me, Greg.
Our program is called Missions Pulse, connecting you with the heartbeat of ministries and outreaches that are sharing the good news of Jesus Christ.